Greetings, family, royals, nobles, autochthons, Asiatics, Nagas, heirs, and heiresses. Dark matter right back at you with another one. And if you noticed, I said right back at you, not right black at you, as I don't play any of those sensational black word games and mind games. There is nothing, there's absolutely nothing wrong at all with the synthetic crayon color black, except only that it does not tie you to a history, landmass, or a culture. The crayon color black only describes what you may look like, but the color black does not tell you who you are. Blacked out and whitewashed. That is the title of this broadcast. Blacked out and whitewashed. The inspiration to do this particular broadcast came from the October 26, 2021 Canaanland Moors YouTube presentation entitled Racist Porcelain and Incompetence of Unconscious Moors. Again, Racist Porcelain and Incompetence of Unconscious Moors by Cujo L. I must say that I do not know exactly when I ran across Canaanland Moors YouTube channel featuring Cujo L, but I have been tuning in very frequently ever since. Matter of fact, there are certain YouTube channels in which I check with almost daily to see if they came out with something new, and Canaanland Moors is definitely one of them. Cujo L has been feeding me not only with the many various books to vastly add to my knowledge, but he also does conscious Moorish tribal hip hop, in which hip hop has always been dear to me, being that I grew up on the outskirts of New York City in the late 1700s, where hip hop was created, where cats like Grandmaster Flash or Spoonie G would frequently come through in the parks of places like Nyack, New York, and Spring Valley, New York, which is basically Rockland County. A wonderful, memorable time indeed when we created hip hop from nothing. One of the books out of many that Cujo L has dropped on me was The Delectable Negro. The Delectable Negro. When I got wind of that book, I was high off of that. I gotta admit, I was high off of that for a minute. And I started pushing that like a true dope dealer or a true dope man. Knowledge is truly dope. And that book is like straight to the point, self-explanatory. Anyway, a job well done to Cujo L and Canaanland Moors and all of you other Moors that are now on the rise to consciousness. This particular YouTube by Cujo L entitled Racist Porcelain and Incompetence of Unconscious Moors highlights the fact that when you see the bust of a Moor or a sculpture or painting of a Moor, which is frequently prevalent throughout various art reflecting the European Renaissance era, mostly all of these images are and were originally Moorish royalty and Moorish nobility, but now have been naively misconstrued by the viewer to be a black slave of some sort. Cujo L points out the many various features on the image, such as golden shoes or fancy headdresses and other prestigious trinkets and emblems, which shows that the person obviously was not a slave. This is important because the people or organization which may be putting these items on display, probably in some museum somewhere, most likely ran by European interests, will be reluctant to inform you of the royal or noble status of the person that is featured in the art display. What I say is the systematic deprivation of actually knowing the royal and noble status of these many various dark colored statues and statuettes is part of an overall agenda to erase your true culture and identity and then further make way for black buffoonery characters such as Aunt Jemima, Black Sambo, etc. Anyway, in this overall broadcast, I will be covering that and adding my evidence and research to show and prove that they are very much depriving you of certain knowledge of your royal status, as well as altering your images altogether by whitewashing them or desecrating your features to make you always look poor, downtrodden, and a low class pauper, peasant, or beggar type of person. I will also be touching on certain buildings and edifices in which the credit has been taken from you architecturally, taken from your architecturally great ancestors and given to some pale-skinned modern race of people, such as the Greeks and or the French. As always, we will start off with some news. What's in the news? Here we go with the very first news article at the top of the list. Papal agent and Catholic so-called Christian Joe Biden dips off to go and meet with Pope Francis at the Vatican in Rome, Italy. This happened probably about 2 weeks ago. Again, papal agent and Catholic so-called Christian Joe Biden goes to see and meet with Pope Francis at the Vatican in Rome, Italy. This is no surprise when one by now should understand that the United States and the United States presidency, ever since year 1871, after the Jesuit-sponsored assassination of Abraham Lincoln, which was of Moorish descent, is an outpost and enclave of the Catholic Christian Pope and Vatican of Rome, Italy. I'll say that again. The United States and the United States presidency is an outpost and enclave of the Catholic Christian Pope and Vatican of Rome, Italy, ever since the coup d'etat of February 21st, 1871, which established the foreign established entity known as the United States Federal Corporation Democracy. Every U.S. president since then is the Pope's man. Okay, Redneck Joe Biden went over there kissing ass and told the Pope that he was the greatest warrior for peace that he has ever met. This is what he's telling the Pope. The Pope is the greatest warrior for peace that Biden has ever met. Okay, this is clearly the furthest thing from the truth, because all of these papal wars around the planet, which leaves many countless people bloodied, injured, maimed, dead, and displaced, are nothing more than modern day Christian crusades and are carried out by the U.S. armed forces, which are papal mercenaries for the Pope and Vatican. Why can't hypocrite so-called Christian Joe Biden and or his pedophile papal Pope daddy ensure peace right here on the lands of North America for people such as the natural melanin-rich brother Jamarion Robinson, who was shot 59 times by these Nazi pig papal agent redneck police who are in service to the Pope and Vatican of Rome, Italy, as they are nothing more than third-party commercial mercenaries of and for the state. How many of you knew that church and state are now one in the same after the church-sponsored, Catholic-orchestrated assassination of Abraham Lincoln? Anyway, to make a long story short, the Pope patted Joe Biden on the head and said that Biden is a good little puppy dog Catholic, and Biden reciprocated by taking his godfather a few gifts. This is blatant treason because, according to the Constitution, the President of the United States of America is not supposed to be all close and lovey-dovey with any foreign power, and especially a foreign religious head of state. So if you all are running around here dumb enough to listen to every word that comes out of Biden's mouth, make sure that you understand that you are consenting to papal policies and papal laws. which are basically ecclesiastical laws and policies of the church. What I say is that if Joe Biden is so tight with the Pope and so dear to the Pope, he should stay his rotten Irish Catholic ass over there and hold an office right there at the Vatican in Rome, Italy. Joe Biden should have never been allowed to step foot back on North American soil. This shows just how constitutionally and civically unaware that sheeple people Americans are. You know, whether a U.S. citizen calls itself black or white or whatever, it doesn't matter. Your intellectual status is the same, literally like mind controlled sheep or some other dumb animal. Anyway, what else is in the news? What else is in the news? The FDA, which I say stand for Fatality and Death Agency, approved a vaccination for your children, in which they specifically referred to your children as kids. Now, how many of you hypocrite so-called Christian black women are going to run down and have your natural melanin-rich child intravenously molested and intravenously raped by putting this poison foreign substance into their bodies, but you want to run around talking crap about R. Kelly molesting someone? By the powers that be, referring to your children as kids would only make sense, being that the definition of kid is KID, is a young animal such as a baby goat, semicolon, its flesh to be used as food. Okay? Bear with me 1 second. You said I'm good. You ain't going out there? No. All right, cool. All right. All right. Pardon me. Where did I leave off at? I'll say it again. By the powers that be, referring to your children as kids, KIDS, would only make sense, being that the definition of kid is a young animal such as a baby goat, semicolon, its flesh to be used as food. So, you brainwashed, brain damaged, black so-called feminist sisters, go ahead and take your baby animals to the slaughterhouse to be slaughtered as food, which obviously makes you the dumb, stupid adult animal. Continuing with the news. The CBS Morning Show had a special on the video sharing application, otherwise popularly known as TikTok, which is lulling young girls in to make them act out certain uncontrollably sexually promiscuous behaviors. In a nutshell, underage girls are being psychologically influenced to act out certain sexually deviant behaviors, which may include the influence of drugs, alcohol, and porn site recommendations. In the exact words of an 11-year-old melanin-rich young girl who confessed that she was definitely addicted to TikTok by using the video sharing application 8 hours a day, she stated from the words directly out of her own mouth, when you don't find anything on it, you will continue in order to find things to make you happy. Okay, this is an 11-year-old girl, 11-year-old natural melanin-rich so-called black girl confessing that she was desperately searching for things on TikTok, which is an artificial virtual platform, to make her happy in real life. Do you all not see a seriously grave danger in this, in which she just might end up in a cold grave after meeting with some deranged serial killer who she may have met on TikTok, who will brutally rape her and chop her into little pieces? Okay, this is a sure tragedy waiting to happen. And it has actually happened. you all had better check the news. Young girls, especially the melanin-rich so-called black ones, are constantly becoming missing all over the place. And you sisters are acting like you all landed a major victory by taking R. Kelly down and getting him put in jail. This particular CBS morning show featured Michael Beckerman, TikTok's head of public policy, if any of you want to research and view that show for yourselves. I think you should. It is very timely and revealing, and is really nothing new, as absolutely all of these media platforms are posing the same online dangers to your youth, especially to your young girls. It takes a village to raise a child. I now ask the question to you hypocrite so-called Christian black women. Where is the village to protect your children from all of these predatory, hypnotic telephone applications, online websites, and all of this other perverted mind-altering digital media? Where is the village to serve as a safety net? Where was the village to serve as a safety net of security and protection for all of those young girls who was allegedly molested by R. Kelly? I'm just asking. A whole lot of you mixed up, tricked out sisters are actually products of TikTok and other perverted media. So you all are not in any position to run your mouths. Not to mention you being culturally / psychologically fit to even raise a child in the first place. Okay, the problem is not TikTok. The problem is your trifling, tricked out, plastic looking asses. Okay? So, where's the village, sisters? I don't see you all advocating for one. You see? I don't see it. Anyway, continuing with the news. I will now give you two articles: Gardening Behind Bars and Growing in Prison, horticulture programs helps inmates learn new skills. Both of these articles are highlighting Michigan State prison programs that supposedly rehabilitate inmates by teaching them the skill of farming. And in many other state prisons across North America, other skills such as welding, butchering meat, plumbing, electrical, etc. What I see right now, right off the bat, is exploitation. To be more specific, human exploitation. To be more exact, state-sponsored slavery in order to continue to reap the commodity of human labor, which really boils down to modern-day slavery in effect. The skill of horticulture, bear with me one second. The skill of horticulture, more familiarly known as farming, is an ancient science in which natural melanin-rich native indigenous aboriginal peoples throughout the world have long time mastered as part of their ancestral customs, culture, and traditions. The colonial slave institution known as the state, as in Enemy of the State, the movie with Will Smith and I think Gene Hackman. The colonial institution known as the state, since the emancipation of slaves in 1866 by Abraham Lincoln, has embarked upon a state campaign to charge the ex-slaves with many various commercial crimes such as vagrancy laws and Christian black codes, which ensure that the new state plantation will be guaranteed a bountiful supply of human slave labor as a lucrative commodity for the state. So-called black people in North America are already frauded into these debtor prisons for a commercial debt in which they have no clue. And then, when they have been physically railroaded inside these facilities, now under the state classification known as inmate, they are further exploited by being forced to get a job and work for very little or no pay, in which their labor is now running the same facility in which they were railroaded into. This is double dipping, meaning that the person have already been made state property, which is an asset to the state, no different than a state animal or a state farm. And now the person is equally psychologically coerced to perform a job working for the prison under the deceptive guise of rehabilitation, good behavior, and the goal of working their way back into society. A movie comes to mind which reveals this modern day slavery, appropriately known as state property, starring Benny Siegel. I think he's a former hip hop brother, Benny Siegel. The only other thing that I will say about this particular article is slavery by any other name is still slavery. Anyway, continuing with the news. I will make this the last news article before I get into the main broadcast. But this is a good one. Just give us our money. Taliban push to unlock Afghan billions abroad. Again, the name of this is Just Give Us Our Money, Taliban push to unlock Afghan billions abroad. This article should not be too hard to find for those who want to read it in its entirety. I will now read a little bit of the article to you. Bear with me, I just lost my place. Bear with me. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to read a little bit of this article to you. It says, Afghanistan's Taliban government is pressing for the release of billions of dollars of central bank reserves as the drought-stricken nation faces a cash crunch, mass starvation, and a new migration crisis. Afghanistan parked billions of dollars in assets overseas with the U.S. Federal Reserve and other central banks in Europe, but that money has been frozen since the Islamist Taliban ousted the Western-backed government in August. Now, that is all that I need to read from that article, as it is self-explanatory and needs no further explanation or further clarity. Just from the two main paragraphs that I just read, do you all see whose money is being frozen? And do you see who is freezing the money? The United States Federal Reserve and other central banks of Europe are freezing the funds of non-European, Asiatic/Africoid brown-skinned peoples who practice the religion of Islam. Okay, these are the same Jesuit-trained Rothschild Jew bankers who now presently have a central bank set up in absolutely every corporation nation, otherwise referred to as corpo nation, within the United Nations. There are approximately 200 legal entity, so-called countries, that are members of the United Nations, and all of them are required to have a central bank, a foreign central bank. And the ones that refuse that foreign central bank or makes moves to get rid of the existing foreign central bank, they got bloody war at their door, which will destabilize their government, overthrow or murder their leader, and replace him or her with a central bank, New World Order puppet. After all, it was one of the Rothschilds that already stated, "Give me control of a nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws." Again, one of the Rothschild bankers, Jew bankers of England, already stated that if you give me control of a nation's currency, meaning the ability to print money, they don't even care who your president is. They don't care who makes that nation's laws, because they're going to control it one way or the other. Continuing, these Jew banksters and monetary gangsters are controlling the world and the people of the world with currency. The root word of currency is current, as in electrical current. more familiarly known as electricity. They are using the ancient science of electricity to run the world and keep people submissive in their perverted world of debt currency, which comes with criminal usury and unpayable monetary interests. Okay, and when you can't pay the principal interest on their funny money, they come in and take your land, your crops, your women, your people, whatever, assets, homes, your soul, basically your mind, body, and soul. That's what's taking place around the planet right now with these damn bankers. But continuing, one scenario which could have served to totally eradicate these poison, parasitic US and European central banks is when, in the year 2009, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, who was then at the time the president of the African Union, suggested to the states of the African Union to switch to a new currency, the gold-backed dinar, which will be independent of the U.S. Federal Reserve fiat dollar that is backed by nothing. The objective of this suggestion by Muammar Gaddafi was to divert all revenues towards state-controlled funds and out of the hands of U.S. and European banks. Countries such as Nigeria, Tunisia, Egypt, and Angola were ready to change their currencies. And there were other Asian, Arab, and Middle East nations that were supportive of this move and who were actually looking forward to this happening. If the entire continent of Africa, all 54 nations, would have acted in unison to change their currencies over, this would have no doubt rid the world of fiat-based Rothschild Jew banker, monopoly game money, poison currency debt notes. This would have been in direct alignment with the late Kwame Nkrumah's 1957 vision of the total liberation of the whole African continent. Okay? And that's the late Kwame Nkrumah, which was, I believe, the leader of Ghana at that time. Ghana's late Kwame Nkrumah in 1957 made a speech. But continuing, in March of year 2011, the NATO-led coalition began a military intervention in Libya. According to one of the 3,000 Hillary Clinton emails released by the U.S. State Department, NATO's plot to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi, was directly to counteract Gaddafi's ban on U.S. currency for Libyan oil, accompanied with desire to go in and steal Libyan oil reserves. Huh? Steal, meaning take without paying for it. So-called Christian nation. Yeah, Christian my ass. Okay? Continuing. These are international thugs and international gangsters and banksters, in which the gangster-style methodology of their operation is described in detail in the book entitled Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins, who confessed that he was one of the goons on the ground doing the work. Leading up to this bogus military campaign against Libya, the pale-faced parasitic European French leader Nicolas Sarkozy came directly in line with the United Filthy Snakes by immediately labeling Muammar Gaddafi as a threat to the financial security of the world. So you see how they stick together, whether they're at odds or not, how they always have a reason to drop their differences and stick together on you when it's going to be beneficial for them and their offspring in the long run. Okay, now continuing. And do you all know who was the president and CEO? CEO standing for Criminal Executive Overseer of the United Snakes when they moved on Gaddafi? Well, you guessed it. great black hope, golden boy slash smooth operator Barack Obama, who is said to be known to actually be the blood nephew of Hillary Clinton. Okay? That's what I think. The way they control him, his mannerisms, everything. I see family, I see hypnosis, I see a Manchurian candidate. Anyway, continuing. Hillary Clinton, who goes by the names, such names as Grand Dame and Mother of Darkness, okay, because where it is, she's part of the Daughters of American Revolution right there in D.C., female Masons, okay, as well as a whole lot of other ones, most of them, all of them. What's her name? Nancy Pelosi, all of them are female Masons, Eastern Stars, etc. So again, Hillary Clinton, who goes by the name Grand Dame and Mother of Darkness, who just so happened to be the U.S. Secretary of State under Barack Obama at that time, punked the entire continent of Africa by putting out a warning to all of the other 53 nations in Africa that if any one of them came to the defense of Libya and Muammar Gaddafi, they will face the full war wrath of the United States. Okay, this is the Grand Dame of the beast talking to you. You know what they was about to do to Muammar Gaddafi in front of the world. They put out a warning to the whole continent of Africa. If any one of you dare to come to Libya's aid, come to Gaddafi's aid, you will face the same consequences, basically be destroyed. Okay, this is diplomacy in the world. Okay, this is respect for leaders. Anyway, continuing. When wicked Hillary did this, punk ass Africa stood down like trained dogs and watched and allowed another African nation to be pillaged and plundered, and the African leader removed and immediately murdered in his own supposedly sovereign country. Okay? This is the history that these Pan Africans are not going to talk to you about. All right, continuing. And Barack Obama, which is supposed to be a Muslim, just like Gaddafi. Okay, I say again, Barack Obama is supposed to be a Muslim just like Gaddafi, and they did all this on his watch. He's the president and CEO of the United States, which is supposed to have all the power. But as you can see that he's just a puppet. All of them are. They have people around them giving them orders and doing things for them, which they are not even allowed to question. They got to go along to get along. Okay, just like this little ass kisser, goddamn Colin Powell, and all of a sudden they burying this piece of shit, and all the people that died for him, melanin rich people died for him, and now he gets to leave his family all this money, almost probably $20,000 a damn month. They set for the rest of their life. Okay, a little masses mulatto, just like Barack Obama. The trend is really clear. These little masses mulattoes like Susan Rice. She's at the funeral. They got to show her. They all come from the same cloth. Talented 10th, Jack and Jill Boulay, Negroes and Negresses. Okay? But continuing, the bottom line here is that we are now in the late year of 2021, and Africa is still pathetically controlled by the same U.S. and European powers, by every African nation still receiving worthless, dehumanizing financial aid, which makes Africa an embarrassment to the world. And you wonder why the Chinese and other Asian nations, such as India, does not respect Africa or African nations. Shameful to say. Bear with me, lost my place again. Lost my place. Bear with me, bear with me, bear with me. This damn thing jumps around, has a mind of its own. We'll get back. We'll get back to it. Just give me a second. Hope you all are learning something here. Hope you all are learning something here. A lot of information here. Okay, getting back to where I left off. Bear with me here. Bear with me. Bear with me. Now, the last thing I said, I'm going to say it again. The bottom line here is that we are now in the late year of 2021, and Africa is still pathetically being controlled or pathetically controlled by the same U.S. and European powers, by every African nation still receiving worthless, dehumanizing financial aid, which makes Africa an embarrassment to the world. And you wonder why the Chinese and other Asian nations, such as India, does not respect Africa or African nations. Okay? Shameful to say, but punk ass Africa is the footstool and poster child and are the childlike dependents of U.S. imperialism. Don't get me wrong, there have been courageous African leaders who stood up to unconditionally rid Africa of colonial interests, and as you can see, they are all dead or physically exiled out of their own land. Just like you have true revolutionaries right here on American soil, North American soil, that stood for the eradication of colonization and the end of fiat Jew banker currency. And as always, they have been taken out, most likely by some boot-licking, butt-licking Negro that is funded by these same Jew banksters and monetary gangsters. So all of this talk, so all of this talk about so-called Africans in the so-called diaspora returning home to Africa means absolutely nothing when Africa has already dropped the ball big time on a global scale, when they did not stick together in the year 2009 with Muammar Gaddafi in the African country of Libya. Africa and Africans cannot continue to play both sides of the fence. All of this so called Pan Africanism is a joke when the entire continent as a whole is not even a so called Pan Africanist. All right? So called Pan Africanist Umar Johnson is now touring certain cities for whatever reason he will be running his mouth about. But if he is not coming to unconditionally denounce and stand against U.S. imperialism on the planet today, then he is just faking the funk. This goes for absolutely all of you other YouTube sensations and opportunists out there. If you all are not advocating for the abolishment of U.S. imperialism, then you are obviously in support of it. No more middle for you black charlatans and so-called Afrocentric tricksters and opportunists, in which to date have not progressed our people forward, but have only held our people back. Continuing to bring all of this back to the original story of the Afghanistan government pressing for the release of billions of dollars of their own money from U.S. and European central banks. This scenario would not exist in Africa. This scenario would not exist if Africa would have done what they were supposed to do back in 2009 and unified all of Africa under one currency, which would have obviously compelled Asia to cooperate and fall in line. as well as many other melanin-rich leaders, Pacific Islands, South American nations, etc., 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 as well as the North American Negro would have been off of that dollar as well. Africa had the chance to bring the world back to a melanin-rich Asiatic/Africoid order, but failed to do so. Punk-ass Africa is out of order. Shame on punk-ass Africa. Anyway, that will end the news segment portion of this broadcast, and we shall now get into the main topic of the broadcast. Blacked out and whitewashed. Going directly to the October 26, 2021 Canaanland Moors YouTube presentation entitled Racist Porcelain and Incompetence of Unconscious Moors by Cujo L. About 14 minutes into this presentation, he will begin showing you several Blackamoor busts. For those of you who do not know exactly what a bust is, that's B-U-S-T, a bust is briefly defined as a sculpted or cast representation of the upper part of the human figure, depicting a person's head and neck and a variable portion of the chest and shoulders. The bust is generally a portrait intended to record the appearance of an individual, but may sometimes represent a type. Busts may be of any medium used for sculpture, such as marble, bronze, terracotta, plaster, wax, or wood. So, by the very definition of bust, it would only appear obvious to me that a bust was created primarily to honor someone in remembrance or tribute of some sort. The online webpage source in which Cujo L is citing from and showing images says in the title, Bust of an Enslaved Man, circa 1700. Circa means around or approximate. Which looks like is from the King's Gallery, Kensington Palace, wherever that may be. Most likely Europe somewhere. That particular title is questionably subject. No, that particular title is questionably suspect. Bust of an enslaved man, because how exactly is an enslaved man supposed to look? And if someone was enslaved, who would sit around and take the time to sculpt an image of this person? And on top of that, who would be interested in seeing the bust of an enslaved person? So right there, I see an ulterior motive to control the image of what someone else is narrating to you. And the fact that these busts are presented to you specifically as Blackamoor busts is even more suspect. Now, what Cujo L says about 14 minutes and 59 seconds into this presentation is that the entire concept of the creation of busts came from someone honoring you when you knew yourselves. And what I say is obviously the pale-skinned Europeans are honoring you and paying tribute to you all throughout Europe, and especially during the so-called European Renaissance with these busts. Okay, Brother Cujo L then reminds you that he has been telling you that the campaign and agenda is all about erasing you from history. Okay, very, very, very true assessment by this brother. Very true. Continuing. What Cujo L is pointing out about the picture on this website of the bust of a so-called enslaved man is that this man is wearing plumes. Well, what is a plume? A plume is identified as a long, soft feather or arrangement of feathers used by a bird for display or worn by a person for ornament. And what Cujo is pointing out is the fact that slaves or enslaved people do not usually have the leisure of continuing to wear decorative ornaments of the traditions of their people when they were free. A slave's attire is usually worn out dungarees and other tattered clothing which Massa gave, which is worn over and over again. That's whether Massa gave it to them or they just were allowed only to wear the same things. Okay, so Cujo L then goes on to further pose the question about the so-called enslaved person. What does a slave know about feathers being placed in a turban or in some type of headwear at the front of the head to symbolize the activation of the God self? If any of you would take a look at this particular bust in which Cujo L is describing from this website, this melanin rich person actually looks royal and regal, with no slave chains on or anywhere near them, no exaggerated big white eyes with exaggerated big red lips, looking like the typical, stereotypical Aunt Jemima Negress or Uncle Buck slave Negro. Cujo L then points out what looks to be some sort of Masonic collar that this person is wearing. Anyway, that is just the first example on that particular YouTube presentation by Cujo L of Canine Moores, which shows a blatant negative contradiction in the art world designed to not tell the truth of who you are and your contributions to this planet, in which the Euro albinoid so called white person is forever indebted to. Okay, continuing. Canyonland Moors featuring Cujo L has another YouTube presentation which was done about a month ago entitled Moorish Rulers of Scotland and British Isles. In this particular YouTube presentation, Cujo L reads directly from a book entitled The Negro Rulers of Scotland and the British Isles by author Dr. John L. Johnson. The information that is being read out of this book is phenomenal and mandatory for anyone who is seeking true history about the powerful impact of the Moors of Europe. Continuing. Cujo L reads all of the modern English names that we constantly use today, which refers to dark-skinned, swarthy peoples of Europe, such as the word Alpine, which is the current brand name of car stereos and home stereo systems and other stereo equipment. This is a power-packed presentation in which you definitely do not want to miss. In the name of the title of this book, The Negro Rulers of Scotland and British Isles, this immediately brings to mind the movie entitled The Last King of Scotland, which was appropriately played by the melanin rich brother and actor Forrest Whitaker. What are they saying to you by portraying the last king of Scotland as a so-called black man or man of Moorish descent? If the last king of Scotland was a so-called black man of Moorish descent, then it would only make sense that every other king which preceded him was of the same ethnicity as well as the ethnicity of the overall original people of Scotland, or what is now called Scotland. The fact has already been intuitively proven that the first inhabitants of what we modernly refer to as Europe today were no doubt dark-skinned, melanin-rich, genetically dominant Asiatic/Africoid Moorish peoples. Okay, what we are referring to as Europe today is nothing more than a peninsula of Asia, also referred to as Asia Minor. This means that the original Europeans and or Caucasians were not melanin deficient genetically recessive, pale-skinned so-called white albinoids. If you would take the modern-day pale-skinned so-called Irish people of today, you will know that the language they speak is not Irish at all, but is Gaelic, which was spoken by the little dark-skinned original inhabitants of that landmass known as Pygmies, Nagas, etc. This is where the expression of running the snakes out of Ireland has its origin, as the Naga peoples revered the snake for metaphysical purposes, and the Christian missionary known as St. Patrick in the 5th century AD forcefully brought Christianity to that area to rid the land of evil, paganistic snake worshiping, which is honored every year as St. Patrick's Day. Okay, so remember, the Catholic Church demonized people as being pagan and paganistic, which really just means traditional sun worshippers, and dealing with the sorcery, which is the source, SOURCE, okay, which they call voodoo now, and all this other all these other lies when they want the power. After all, and they got the power now with cosmology and planets and things like that. But continuing, absolutely all of the Irish folklore of little magical people is, in one way or the other, talking about the little brown skinned original pygmy inhabitants of what is now referred to as Ireland. According to Irish folklore, these little magical people went by such names as leprechauns, pixies, fairies, wizards, gnomes, etc. If you recall, the 1993 movie Leprechaun featured the little pale skinned man who wanted his gold, in which gold was used by the little brown skinned pygmies for alchemy and other alchemical purposes. If you look at the famous little magical character named Merlin the Wizard, you will see that the name Merlin has the first three letters MER, which is a variation of MOR, otherwise suggesting MOOR, more, as the vowels in ancient words are interchangeable. So Merlin the Wizard is indirectly revealing that he was a Moor, or of Moorish descent, which again is talking about the pygmies, the little magical people, brown skinned magical people. This brings us to the MER in the word mermaid, in which what they are really saying is actually more maid, MOOR, maid, MAID, which is the melanin rich sisters that rode on the ships and who aided and assisted the brothers, okay, while the brothers was mastering the seven seas. So interestingly enough, once again, the modern day mermaid have now been represented back to you as an imaginary make-believe half woman, half fish character with pale skin and overall European Euro-albinoid features. What immediately comes to mind is Disney's The Little Mermaid, in which the dead giveaway that the mermaid is originally an ancient melanin-rich woman is that the mermaid in the Disney movie was named Ariel. Okay, Ariel. Okay, in the name Ariel, you clearly see the suffix entitled El, which is a Canaanite deity and is short for the name Elohim, which is plural, and Eloah, which is the singular form. That's Eloah. This brings us to the Superman movie, in which Superman's birth name is Kal-El. That's Kal-El. You all should know by now that the female superhero Wonder Woman is overall referring to the so-called black woman, and Superman is referring to the so-called black man because of your genetic genetically dominant qualities, melanin rich, genetically dominant, superior, genetically superior qualities, meaning your cells, your liver, everything about you. Okay, that brings us to Henrietta Lacks in Maryland, the sister who John Hopkins stole her cells and has been using it for medicine. Okay, that's all of you sisters. All of you sisters have miraculous cells and atoms. That's a trait of our peoples, genetic trait of our peoples, standard genetic traits. Anyway, continuing, when the Marvel Comics character, the Incredible Hulk, gets angry and acquires super strength, he turns green, which is symbolic of melanin hue pigmentation, which is a significant source of strength for so-called black peoples. Continuing, coming back to the letters MER. MER is also prevalent in and as the root word of the words merchant, merchandise, and mercantile, as the Moors slash Phoenicians slash Carthaginians brought merchandise and commercial goods all over the known world by them being masters of the seven seas. We do know that the absolute only way to master the seven seas is to be very highly astute in the fields of astronomy, astrology, and cosmology. When one talks about the magnificent monumental cosmological works, one must talk about Stonehenge in Asia Minor, now referred to as Europe. This work is evidence of a melanin rich Atlantean Moorish civilization, which obviously had a high affinity to the cosmological workings of nature. Stonehenge Monument, which is believed to have been constructed between like 3000 BC and 2000 BC, is orientated toward the sunrise on the summer solstice. The United Kingdom, which are people predominantly of pale skinned so-called white descent, now claims this monument as one of their most favorite landmarks and furthermore regarded as a British cultural icon. And we already know what the original British people look like, the Moors. So it is basically the same cultural theft of the obelisk, the real name being Tekenu, and what is now referred to as Washington, D.C., and has been plagiarized into the name Washington Monument. The list goes on and on and on of your great achievements in which you no longer get the credit for because of Eurocentric interests not revealing who the originators are. But that's what I'm doing this broadcast for, to get you all back on track and to give you evidence. This is court. The universe is now in court. This is the real people's court. Evidence. Present your evidence where you stand, wherever you at, whether you east, west, north, or south. Drop the evidence and let the people figure it out. Continuing, getting back to the little magical people, in which we already said is referring one way or the other to the ancient copper-colored Aboriginal pygmies, the Twa and the Anu tribes. Was not Yoda in the famous Star Wars movie a little blue/green, melanin-rich, wisdom-filled, prophetic type of character? And his name, Yoda, can easily be seen as Yuda or Yehuda of ancient Judean descent. And you know what they look like. Okay, there was not definitely these modern day blue green eyed Khazarian slash Ashkenazim imposters. Continuing, and his name Yoda, I already said that part, but continuing, even the Jedi Knight character in Star Wars is referring to a Hindu based science of the copper colored Hindu and Buddhist people of Asia. in which the original word Jedi, Jedi, is derived from the word Jedi, Djedi, from the ancient East. The producer of the movie Star Wars is said to be married to a so-called black woman. So you can see where he's getting his power from. A lot of his power. He up in that Stargate. He up in the yoni of the original woman. He ain't stupid. Okay, most of them, most of these white devils now are running for a sister with melanin, whether she be Asian, especially Asians, Africans. Anyway, that's another whole subject. But continuing, coming back once again to the significance of little magical people, which are none other than the ancient melanin-rich pygmies. In the original 1982 movie entitled Poltergeist, in which the definition of poltergeist is a ghost or other supernatural being that is responsible for physical disturbances, the young pale-skinned European Euro-albinoid so-called white child somehow got physically sucked in through the television screen portal, and no one could get the child physically out of the television except a little wisdom-filled, supernaturally gifted woman. This little woman in this movie was no doubt representing the talents of an ancient melanin-rich pygmy woman, but in this particular movie, the little magical woman was portrayed as a European, Euro-albinoid, pale-skinned, so-called white woman. As I said earlier, I can go on and on with the stuff. Okay, how about the 1976 movie Sybil, starring Joanne Woodward and Sally Field, which is based on the book with the same name? This modern day movie Sybil, which is spelled Sybil, is a plagiarization of the word Sibyl, which is Sibyl, which is originally a natural melanin-rich, genetically dominant Asiatic / Africoid Aboriginal woman with natural prophetic abilities, otherwise known as natural clairvoyancy and natural psychic abilities. Due to the natural melanin-rich so-called black woman's natural extraordinary wit, which is WIT, which happens to be the first three letters of the word witch, WITCH, as these melanin-rich sisters were derogatorily referred to as witches to steal their gold, their wealth, and their land by the church. Okay, she, the so-called black woman, naturally sees further and naturally thinks deeper than her complementary sex and natural counterpart, which is the man, the so-called black man. And due to the natural melanin-rich woman being able to miraculously bring life through her awesome womb, accompanied with her always thinking of the security and protection of her unborn child, she, due to her natural state of powerful discernment, prophetically speaks and prophetically acts in a constant way, which has given her such known attributes as psychic, extraordinary ability to reason, magical powers, etc., especially with her cosmologically symbiotic relationship with the moon. This also makes her often at times hard to understand because she is fickle like nature, because she is nature. And nobody fools with Mother Nature. So again, the word Sybil, Sibyl, spelled, again, the word Sybil spelled Sybyl, is a title for a natural melanin-rich African prophetess, which was eventually stolen by the male-centered Catholic Church and now referred to as a plagiarized concept of prophecy. Okay, where the hell you get a male prophesying from, especially a damn pale-skinned so-called white male? They don't have a womb. Okay, they have no clairvoyancy, at least not like the woman. So the whole concept of prophecy has been acquired and stolen from who? The so-called black woman. So understand that in the Bible, the whole book is supposed to be about prophecy. So the whole book is a damn plagiarization of the damn Black Madonna that the wrinkled ass white Pope bows to in secret. Y'all stop playing with me. It's time for this damn truth to come out with a vengeance. Okay? So if you want to know more about the Sybil, there's a website, mamiwata.com. She goes in nicely on the Sybil, the African prophetess. But continuing, the modern day 1976 movie entitled Sybil, spelled Sybil, just so happens to now portray the unnatural, melanin deficient, genetically recessive, pale skinned, European, Euro-albinoid so-called white actress Sally Field as the Sybil, who possessed the psychic and clairvoyant abilities. As you can see, once again, they flipped the script to diminish you from your historical credit worthiness and gave it to a Johnny come lately, pale white foreigner. Let us now look at some ancient architectural and building methodology which was stolen from your great ancestors. I can tell you right now that there simply would not have been a Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, France, or a Vatican construction in Rome, Italy, without the Moors. It was a Moor, Benjamin Banneker, that designed Washington, D.C. with high cosmology. And once again, they historically gave the credit to a pale-skinned so-called white Frenchman named Pierre Charles L'Enfant, which is why there's a Washington, D.C. metro train stop specifically named L'Enfant Plaza in honor of the wannabe designer of Washington, D.C. A lot of people do not know that the Greeks copied their building methodology from the Romans, and the Romans copied their building methodology from the ancient Atlanteans, which were Moors, Mours. For example, the standard stone columns or row of columns in which you see in most governmental buildings and ancient monuments all around the world, most people off the top of their head would say that these columns are of Greek origin. And the second assertion would be that they are of Roman origin. These particular columns are the standard building architectural methodology of the ancient empire of Atlantis, which is said to have existed approximately 9,000 years ago. The people of Atlantis, otherwise referred to Atlanteans, were natural, melanin-rich, genetically dominant Moors, Mours, of ancient Lemuria, Mu Atlantis, etc. Remember, the ancient conquered Moors, as Mours, from the land of Mu, have been rewritten in history as Carthaginians, Saracens, Blackamoors, Berbers, Arabs, Tatarians, Ethiopians, Egyptians, Persians, blacks, Negroes, coloreds, Spaniards, Hispanics, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, Indians, West Indians, Africans, African Americans, Afro Americans, etc., etc., etc. I will now turn your attention to the brilliant works of Santos Bonacci in one of his relatively recent YouTube videos entitled Tataria in Mexico. What I will say before I get into this is one must always remember the fact that original / aboriginal melanin-rich genetically dominant parent races of peoples are the founders of the greatest civilizations on earth, which encompass the first evidences of architecture, languages, writing systems, calendar systems, horticulture, sciences, mathematics, government, etc., etc., etc. The modern day modern kind of a man, which is otherwise known as mankind, had absolutely nothing, knew absolutely nothing, and did absolutely nothing of any significance unless they got it from you. Even the German so called swastika is originally an ancient Himalayan indigenous symbol, which was as usual plagiarized slash stolen and perverted by a pale skinned modern person or modern peoples. Swastika, just in case you know, the swastika was used in Mu. It's a symbol of Mu. Okay, the basis of the symbol is a cross. Okay, which is not a Christian cross. So you can do your research on that. Continuing, if you would tour, hold on a second, I lost my place for a second. I lost my place again. Bear with me. Bear with me. Bear with me. Bear with me. Let me get my place. Uh, bear with me. Bear with me. Bear with me. Okay, the last thing I said was even the German so-called swastika is originally an ancient Himalayan indigenous symbol, which was, as usual, plagiarized slash stolen and perverted by pale-skinned modern peoples. If you would tour, if you would tour practically any major metropolitan city in North America, especially a very old city such as Baltimore, there are many various structures, especially churches, that simply could not have been built by Johnny come lately Euro Albanoid Europeans. There is a very ancient science to building, and the melanin rich ancient peoples have already mastered it. The fierce conquering campaigns of Euro Albanoid Europeans, such as Alexander the Greek, so called Alexander the Great, when they ran up on an ancient building or ancient structure, they would not dare tear that structure all the way down to the ground, knowing that they could not even fathom how to build with that much architectural expertise and superior craftsmanship. The Johnny come lately Euro Albanoids are notoriously famous for keeping and preserving the base of an ancient structure and adding minor cosmetic revisions, something as minuscule as placing a fig leaf at the top or on the corner of it, and then diabolically and deceptively referring to it as a Greek, French, or Roman structure or architecture. They do this all the time. They're expert plagiarists, which is another word for liar, basically schizophrenic lies. But this is what Santos Bonacci is going to point out to you in the above mentioned YouTube presentation entitled Tartaria in Mexico. The Tartarians, so that you fully understand, were natural Asiatic slash Africoid aboriginal melanin rich ancient peoples, otherwise known as being of Moorish descent, and their ancient style of architectural buildings and building methods reflected their ancient phenotype, genotype, and blood type. Santos Bonacci actually went on location to many various places to reveal in a series of YouTube videos the Tartarian influence in the building structures and in their building methodology. In one particular place, Santos Bonacci found a church slash cathedral with ancient Tartarian architecture, but found the famous Jesuit logo IHS in certain significant places throughout the structure, which shows the culture vulture who stole and claimed the ancient structure as their own, no doubt through bloody wars and Christian crusade conquests. Okay, for more information on the Tatarians, the Moorish brother known as Asir, the Duke of Tears, has several YouTube videos which elaborates on the Tatarians and their ethnicity and ethnic origins and their very significant role they played in certain parts of history, which is not going to be told to you, of course. But continuing with the broadcast, and remember the name of this particular broadcast is Blacked Out and Whitewashed, to show how all of the mostly modern kinds of Euro-Albanoid people have stolen your culture and sciences and are now greatly benefiting off of it, while they spit in your face, look down on you, and kick you to the curb. I will now turn your attention to a YouTube video entitled Moors and Hidden Hispanic History by anthropologist Robert Sepehr. Name is spelled Sepehr. Okay. Remember the name of this YouTube is Moors and Hidden Hispanic History. The very first words and statement that comes out of the narrator's mouth in this video is, and the narrator obviously is Robert Sepehr, but the very first words comes out of their mouth is the Jota, which is spelled Jota, and as you know, the J is silent in the Spanish language. So the Jota is a Spanish folk dance popular in Spain dating back centuries. With different variations depending on the region, Jota is derived from Latin and means jump, which describes the lively, bouncy movements of the dance. Castanets are percussion instruments that almost tickle the ear and are used in Moorish, Ottoman, ancient Roman, Italian, Sephardic, Swiss, and Portuguese music, but also by the Phoenicians 3,000 years ago. Now, I'm going to interject right here and emphasize to y'all that all of these descriptions that he just gave of the people who use the castanet, Moorish, Ottoman, ancient Roman, Italian, Sephardic, Swiss, and Portuguese, are all referring to ancient melanin-rich original/aboriginal peoples. Then he just went ahead and told you that the Phoenicians, which are the Carthaginians, who both descend from the Atlanteans, which are Moors, Mours, also used these castanets in their music about 3,000 years ago. Now, around 1 minute and 40 seconds into this presentation, the narrator, which I think is Robert Sepehr, says the Jota dance is clearly the foundation of many couple dances, courtship dances in the Americas, such as the Jota Tapatio of Jalisco, Mexico, which shows the powerful Moorish influence right here in the Americas, particularly in the Mexicans. This is what I'm saying, which shows the powerful Moorish influences right here in the Americas, particularly in the Mexicans, who are already predominantly of indigenous Moorish descent. The narrator goes further on to say, legend states that this dance, known as the Jota, was originally brought to Spain by the exiled Moorish poet. About 5 minutes and 10 seconds into this presentation, an unnatural about 5 minutes and 10 seconds into this presentation, an unnatural melanin deficient, genetically recessive, pale skinned so called white woman, who referred to herself as Miriam, in which she claims to be an Amazigh militant, says, number one, that the word in identity Berber means one from the forest, or basically someone that is wild, like an animal. And she said that the word Berber comes from the Greek, in which the Romans used. This is important because when you see all these words, they don't describe a people. If they don't have a history, land mass, and a culture, you know, I already gave you all the names that Moors were referred to at many times in history. But continuing, ironically, this Euro-Albanoid person, the Miriam that I told you about just earlier, with some small degree of melanin in her skin, proudly and militantly referred to herself under the indigenous tribal name Amazigh, which were originally phenotypically and genotypically natural melanin-rich genetically dominant peoples. So this pale-skinned European-looking woman is expressing anger over the issue that while her people, in which she claims to be Amazigh, are being written out of the nation's history books and their Amazigh traditions are being stage managed for tourist dollars. Let me say that again. So this pale-skinned European-looking woman is expressing anger over the issue that while her people, in which she claims to be Amazigh, are being written out of the nation history books, their Amazigh traditions are being stage managed for tourist dollars. Miriam has found other self-claimed Amazigh militants, all with pale skin just like her, who are fighting to preserve what they call as their Amazigh culture, customs, traditions, languages, etc. What I will now say to begin wrapping up this overall broadcast: pale-skinned people around the world are standing in the cultural shoes and cultural greatness of the present-day U.S. so-called Negro, Black, Coloreds, and African Americans, and have taken up the militaristic fight to preserve what they usurp. Okay, they're openly and boldly calling themselves militants to fight to preserve that usurped culture, which they usurp. But the forcefully assimilated so-called blacks in North America do not have the will to stand up and militantly embark on a campaign to relearn who they are and to militantly take their culture and identity back. What is the sense of bringing children into the world and you have no real true values, culture, customs, and traditions, which equates to a legacy, estate, and inheritance to pass on to them? This is a race of peoples headed for a guaranteed destruction and extinction. So when Dr. Jose V. Pimiento Bay was a professor of Moorish studies at, I believe, Berea College in Kentucky, he stated that his classes were packed with pale-skinned Euro-Albanoid so-called white people who were overly anxious to learn Moorish history, while the melanin-rich so-called black students, who are actually descendant of the Moors, had very little to no interest in the curriculum, but instead had their mind on things such as playing sports. This is partly the reason why U.S. Negroes are now on the bottom of everything in North America. Their priorities are in massive accord. And I tell you what, you keep this bullshit up and your ass gonna be wiped out. You will be wiped out. Okay? It was Claude Anderson. I think he did the book Powernomics, but Claude Anderson been saying this for probably at least a decade, that so-called black people in North America are headed to be the permanent underclass, and there's nothing nice about that. That's actually very scary because you can actually see it taking place. Okay, I can continue on to show you your greatness in absolutely all areas of civilization, and your greatness now being usurped by mostly pale-skinned foreigners, which have no intentions of letting you get it back. I can show more on how things like the seals on their pseudo-government paperwork documents, the protocols which they follow and adhere to in a Masonic / fraternal / sorority meetings, the colors, objects, and symbols on their modern bigoted flags, Okay, their coats of arms, family crests, etc., 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 all come from you when you rule the world. It all comes from you. You got to get a book by Brother Abdullah Bay. And I'm sorry, I didn't even write this book down. I didn't even mean to mention it. But it's got something to do with time, something of time, man. You got to get that book. You can find it. Something got to do with time, masonry, what masonry was really used for in society, because that word masonry is all thrown off. But you got to understand the functions of masonry, and you see it's a whole lot is opposite of this fake bullshit of these modern day masons who then made a little clique to usurp the science. That's not real masonry, and that's not the real functions of masonry. Anyway, Abdullah Mosley Bay is his name. Something I do with time, and just look it up. You get it, or go on RV Bay Publications. Somebody know. Everyone knows it, and I've mentioned it several times. I just didn't intend on mentioning it. But in conclusion of this overall broadcast, a people who do not advocate and stand for the nationality and birthrights of their ancient ancestors will succumb to anything. So even the pale-skinned Euro-albino European so-called white boy entertainer Justin Bieber stated that he would not even have a career if it was not for the brothers. Okay, he's confessing, he's giving it up. Even the white boy Eminem, so-called white boy Eminem, which people have the nerve to say he's better than Rakim, stated that when he saw NWA in Compton on the stage controlling that mic, that's how he knew what the hell he wanted to do. Okay, so how are you going to give the damn student the credit of being a master? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So don't you all know by now that we make them better? Okay, we make them better in all areas of people/human activity, which is labor, law, politics, religion, sex, warfare, education, economics, etc. Understand that. All of the blackface painting that was worn in Europe by the Albanoids were actually paying tribute to the Moors, even though it is turned derogatory. But they're not going to let you know originally they were paying tribute to you because they envied you. They wanted to be you, and they still want to be you. Still want to be you and be like you and be you. So this is the truth that's got to come with a vengeance. They love to hate you and hate to love you. But all this is coming out, man. When the people are at the bottom, the only way for them to go is out or up. And damn it, I'm not going out. I'm not going out. Okay, I'm gonna live forever and haunt these bastards. They get rid of me. I'm gonna tell you that now. So check out some of the classic videos by Dr. Jose Pimiento Bay. I think he got one called The Fall of the Moorish Empire. And Ivan Van Sertima has many treats on the credit that your people they're trying to block the credit of what you did, especially the Moors, and basically the Africoid peoples, which they don't want you to know. I mean, Ivan Van Sertima said he was doing a class, and at the end of the class, a melanin-rich brother, a man, came up to him with tears in his eyes and thanked him because this brother said he never knew we did anything. He thanked Ivan Van Sertima for the facts and the confirmation of what his people did. With tears in his eyes, it's a grown man crying, thanking Ivan Van Sertima for sharing with him what the hell his people have done. So don't tell me truth is not a healer, that truth is not divine, especially the truth of who you are as a people. And I think it was Ivan Van Sertima said we need to go on a damn crusade for consciousness. And that's what it's all about, man. Truth is going to flip this whole damn thing. It's flipping it now. The money system, the church system, every damn thing is flipping. And ain't nothing they can do about it. I just chose to get into assisting the universe, completely eradicating this bullshit. Especially with this damn false vaccination. I mean, they got my man on the ropes. It's his name, Fraudsky, Fauci. They got him on the ropes, man. The people are retiring. They're getting people up out of here. Okay, that's the time we're in now, man. It's time to hold court. In court, there's enforcement. Real bailiffs stand up. Real clerk of the court stand up. We need enforcement. Okay, truth is about enforcement. Justice is enforcement. So anyway, I'm going to end this broadcast. As always, no matter where you go, there you are. Dark matter with another one. Like U.S. imperialism. I'm out.